All right, let's see. Looks like I got sound on the microphone. Get settled in here. Got sound in these things. That in. So tunes here. All right, I'm jumping straight in. This is not what I worked on the last stream, because the last stream was on Saturday where we did the CircuitPython help desk, but this is what I worked on the stream prior to that. So if you're interested in the history of this project and you haven't caught the previous streams, there are a couple VODs, excuse me, that I've done where I did work on this same project, and I'm picking up on it tonight. Basically what I'm doing tonight is trying to clean up and document the two widgets that we created, FlipDigit and FlipClock. Right now, they exist, they've been tested, there's examples. And what I've actually done so far on this project today, at least, is added comments to the examples, and then I actually made one other functional change, which was removing the transparent indexes from being an argument that you pass to the widget. It used to be these transparent indexes, we would pass them to the widget init function, and it would do this inside of FlipDigit, but I figured it made more sense to not do it that way. For one thing, it was inconsistent between static and animation. Static, we were handling the transparency out here, but animation, we were passing it in and handling it inside the constructor, and I thought that inconsistency didn't make sense. And I decided the way to go was to just move the transparency out, and like the user is essentially expected to load the spreadsheet and thus palette before they initialize the widget anyway. So like they might as well just control it at the user level code rather than having the widget worry about it, right? It's one less thing on the widget's plate if it doesn't know or care about the transparencies. You can just set those in the palette. You give the widget that palette, it will use it and not ask questions, so to speak. So I made that change, and so I may have other tweaks like that as we go through this. There may be more stuff we cut out or potentially add back in, stuff like that. Definitely need some cleanup still in the PIL script here. You can see there's lots and lots of old print statements and stuff from when I was still figuring out all the 3D transformations and all kinds of stuff inside of here. So definitely going to clean that up as well. That's kind of where I'm at, is doc strings and clean up, get that stuff ready to go. One thing is this doesn't have the header, which we should have. So we should probably have like pretty much all of this stuff. So I guess this, I don't know, does it need this? This one actually doesn't have in it. Interesting. Okay, so I guess that must be the default. This knows where it is. potentially add more things here. One thing we need to do is I want to make an example, another example that uses smaller sprite sheets. Right now we have these 10 frame sprite sheets. 2, 3, 4, 6, 10, yeah, 10 frames per animation. I think those are a little bit too big, probably for the PyPortals. I want to say Paul SK or somebody mentioned trying it on the PyPortal, and I ran out of memory. So I think we'll maybe export some, I don't know, 5 or 6 length ones maybe, and see if we can get them to work on a PyPortal and see how much RAM is left over afterwards. And then maybe we can add PyPortal here and have those specific examples for it. I try to keep the widgets generic enough that the user code can kind of control that stuff so it can be used in different environments, but I have not done any kind of like sanity testing to know if it's really practical on a PyPortal or not yet. I mean, the PyPortals have a decent chunk, just not as much as the ESP32S2s, so I think we could get there if we shrink that spreadsheet down a bit. I think we really need to say imports. Eventually, I guess this should maybe be configurable. I don't know. We'll leave it hard-coded now and see if anybody asks for functionality to change it. This is how much space it will create between the two pairs to show the colon in the middle. I don't have the camera set up today, but I do have my device here running, and I look down at it. Spaces. Let's see, so this will be gap in pixels. The colon will be shown in between two pairs. I should have one of these. It's going to have like a description of the class and also all the parameters. The right syntax? No. punctuation. I mean, technically you could do it after you initialize, but the gist of it is handle your transparent and your opaque colors outside of this object. I think saying before is the easiest way to say that, even though actual chronology doesn't actually matter. We're gonna have a bunch more bitmaps. So currently we take the tile width and the tile height, so we'll keep it. Could theoretically just use the animation frame count along with the size of sprite sheets to find the tile height and tile width, but I think I like the idea of the user passing them in case somebody wants to try to like reuse this with sprite sheets that are maybe not in the same order or whatever. Like this class kind of assumes your sprite sheets are laid out like this, with value 0 being one row, value 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth, and then each frame representing the columns. Maybe somebody would eventually want to like rearrange the sprite sheets and do it differently. I don't know. Being able to provide this here, I feel like makes it a little more flexible than just only dividing out the size from the full sheets. No, actually that'll be on height. should be half the full height. So our full static sprites are 48 pixels wide by 100 pixels tall. That means our tile height and tile width, because height is half, are 48 wide by 50 tall, half of the total 100. Seeing all those doc strings, nice. Yeah, thank you. I sometimes feel like I do a bit of like cart behind the horse or vice versa. Sometimes I feel like I should maybe write them out earlier than I do. I tend to like get through all the code and then write them out, but I feel like this way, because I get settled more. Sometimes I'm axing out arguments or changing what they do or changing how they behave. If I don't document it yet, then I don't have to change it, but it's probably still worth it to go a bit earlier. Number of frames in the flip animations. So default value is 10. Is the number contained in the example sprite sheets. Say the number contained in the example sprite sheets. I guess eventually we may clarify, because I hope to include an example with a smaller number runnable on the PyPortal, but maybe we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Almost using docs like TDD. It's like TDD, yeah. So we will have animation delay. This one's the float. Delay. So time. To wait between animation frames. The value is 2 seconds. Brighter level, darker level, medium level. So these are the three kind of weird ones. And actually, I wanted to add, and I think I did in FlipDigit, still need to be testing this. I wanted to add dynamic lighting. Or dynamic fading. Decided I think this should be optional and able to be turned on and off with a single Boolean. This was the part that uses the palette fader that Seagrover made, that makes top half of the animation lighter, the bottom half underneath the shadow darker, and then raises or sets the medium level to be in between the brighter and darker values. So honestly, it kind of makes sense this would come before all of these brightness levels. I don't think the order actually matters, but if this is turned off, then none of these will be used. This is kind of like a overall switch for dynamic fading. Boolean or bool? Maybe it's supposed to be bool. Dynamic fading. Whether or not to use palette fader to simply adjust brightness. Bottom half. So we'll leave it at that. Adjust brightness. Or not. Comma, probably. This weather. Okay. So brightness modifier value to use the brightest version for emissions. Valid range is 0.0 to 1.0. Although you probably wouldn't want to go that low. Truthfully, the rest of these three are almost going to be identical. Why is it doing that? They are darker level and medium. Standard or default? Medium level gets used for the static ones as well. Okay. And then we should probably break this out and put annotations in here as well. I already have palette out here. Let's see as we combine other stuff what we need. Probably worth it to just go ahead and down to their own line here to make a nice list. I wonder if we could, or if there is already a tool that will either generate docstrings from typing annotations or vice versa, generate typing annotations from docstrings. I wonder if we could like write this once and then run a thing to move it to both places, since it's largely the same data, it just appears in different spots, basically. Different things use it. One thing is we will definitely want to, I did this, I think, over here. You only import the fader. Actually, I guess it's not. It doesn't actually import it in this one. Yeah, come to think of it, sorry. Microphone, hopefully that wasn't too loud. Let's see here. So it really just needs to pass it through to the digit. Right here, we're just going to go dynamic fading equals dynamic fading. It's like we actually create a bunch of these. Widgets. So this is what we extend. So basically just storing all these variables that we're going to need to access later. This is honestly like all of these. So I'll say append it to parent group because so we extend widget, but widget extends group. So we are, when we say append here, self.append, we're adding this to the parent. We're adding the digit 0 to the parent, which is widget, but its parent is a group. So ultimately, this is how it gets shown on the display. This is the second digit of first pair. This kind of goes with it, honestly. It's setting the location and then adding it to the parent group. It's the first digit of the second pair, and this is the second digit of the second pair. I suppose at some point we should probably offer some ability to customize colon. At one point I actually was using the sprite for the colon, but not anymore. We actually don't have enough room for that anymore. Not at the size that it is. Right now we just hard code it to white though. Probably going to want to let them change that. Or, well, it wouldn't be in FlipDigit, though. It would only be in FlipClock. Let's open up. So this one's weird. I guess technically it's an int, but color would be nice. We just call it int here. We have like a color protocol. I don't know, it'd be nice if there was a way to specify like this is technically an int, but really what we want is a hex value with 0 to 6 digits. Python sees it as an int, but we know its meaning is a little bit more deep than that, truthfully. It's after animation delay. So we don't really need it on a field. You can kind of just set it here, and then it will be on the colon palette. Value for pair of digits is valid. Must be a string. So we'll 0 pad it, essentially, so if a person just puts the value as 1, it will turn into 0, 1 for that pair of digits. Where do you declare similar, or should declare like this thing is going to be a string? I guess the return value, which I haven't been typing yet, that's right. Square brackets. Hooray.
I went to the hardware store instead.
Go back and do some of the ones of these we missed. This is before the colon. This one, as I recall it, this one kind of like piggybacks off of this one since it's for the same property. Anything more? Blend these. This one returns none always. This should be a string. This one too. Just trying to make sure the changes we've made are not breaking anything. Something now. Okay. Right, yeah, we're not passing them. Yeah, we should be though. Was full color that we didn't pass down. These ones we should have. Seem like they are. So, let's just make sure we're actually using the version of the library code we're expecting. Let's see. I think this might be something weird with the fact that I have FlipClock and FlipDigit at the root of my drive. FlipClock inside of here says from FlipDigit import FlipDigit, which is meant to be targeting this file, but suspicion is that it's actually getting this one. I guess, yeah, we should probably be specifying the whole thing like that. Yeah. So now I see this. So now we are actually using the right file, but because we've been using the wrong file for so long, there's other stuff that's broken. The first thing is, let's take what we have for FlipClock here, let's put it in the repo. We did a bunch of stuff. So I guess a lot of this is in the repo already. This is I guess this version's actually already up to date. Except for the import, I guess, would be the one thing. So we should take that and put it here. So probably something's using the static fader. Or, oh yeah, actually a bunch of things are using faders. So the thing is, we want to use the faders when dynamic fading is enabled, but when it's not, we want to use the palette that was passed to us. There's no static fader. I'm going to set these to none. Oh, the static does actually use dark sometimes. What about that? So now these can just say or. So if it's none, then none is falsy, which means we use this one, which will not be falsy. This user passes none for it. I guess they'll both be none, and I guess it'll crash or do whatever it does when you pass none for the pixel shader. Oh, that's annoying. Doesn't work that way because we're accessing palette from it. Okay. We make these. We set these. Set all of these also. And in the else, we're going to set these to values the user gave us. And then finally here, we're going to use the variables we created. So here we have something that should keep dynamic fading itself and only do this stuff. Hey, there we go. I will say the dynamic fading does add quite a bit to it. It looks a lot better with the dynamic fading. Yeah, that was disabled, and now with this one it is enabled. That's working correctly. I think these ended up not being just maybe. I want to say these were part of the attempt at making this asynchronous. Some of these are actually the same. Basically have all the same things except for the dynamic, no, except for the colon color. Of course, each individual digits don't have any concept of the colon color because they don't have what clock does. We should test that that works though, huh? I did change it and then didn't actually test it. Let's do green. Oops, it's not CSS. Digit has no attribute, not animating. think when the day comes to making a sync one, I may build a different class rather than trying to make this one do both. It's going to need its own, it's going to need kind of a lot of logic, some async logic that will behave differently. Okay, this did change the colon to now be green, so I think we're good to go there. Then all of our parameters. This is working without these things. Means it'll be working without the other place where we had. So these could pretty much have what are the same of this. These are basically just initializations. I don't think they add much. This will be int. Oh my, what's that? Let's just load into this. So in this case, I will actually make, I don't know how it works, or if it works, but I'm going to make a separate doc string for the setter, even though I normally don't, because this setter does actually kind of go above and beyond the getter a little bit. Because this does the animation. Ignore new value if it's the same as current. Animations and things. It's a little bit broad, I guess. That might have been like the only comment in this file before. It's pretty funny. Should say things. I mean, it's not untrue, but really shed very much light on it. So. So this is going to set the first frame of the top animation. Basically, the first frame is the furthest left one, so depending on which value you pass in, it's going to choose the first frame in the animation for that value. So if you say new value is 4, it's going to choose the first frame in the animation for 4. Put it into the top animation tile grid. Show the top animation tile grid. Once that's showing, it is now on top of the top static tile grid. So now we're going to change top static tile grid to its new value. This is hidden behind the top animation tile grid initially. Okay, this is blocking, so this is going to run the whole top flip animate, and when it's done, then we go to here, we hide the top animation tile grid, basically do the bottom. Set the, should be top static, bottom static to its new value. This is hidden behind the bottom animation tile grid initially. Is it? No, we're setting animation. Set the bottom animation tile grid to its new value. Show the bottom animation tile grid. Run the bottom half animation. Bottom half flip animation. Oops. Set the bottom static tile grid to new value. Sprite index. Hide the bottom animation tile grid, which reveals the bottom static tile grid. We just updated here. So we update this, and then we hide this, which makes this now visible. We intentionally update it while it's still behind the visible thing in front of it, and then we make that thing invisible, or rather invisible. We make it invisible so that we now reveal that thing that we just changed before. If dynamic fading is enabled, set the bottom static tile grid back to the normal, back to the medium brightness palette. So this makes it darker, this puts it back to regular. Else, this is the invalid value. Erase the error. In function that runs displays the top animation sprites sequentially, sleeping for anim delay between each. Doesn't return anything. The value is a int. Loop over frame count. Set the top animation. Set the top animation sprite to current animation frame sprite index. Sleep delay. This will be pretty much the same. Blocking function that displays the bottom animation sprites sequentially, sleeping for animation delay between each. Loop over frame count. Set the bottom animation sprite to current animation frame sprite X frame. Sleep for delay. Okay. Let's copy all this back to the device, make sure it's working. We don't want to Control F, find it. That's not what we want to do. All right, it's working. So now FlipClock and FlipDigit are commented up, docstringed up, annotated up. I'm going to run back through and do a check on everything. So docstrings with parameters, type annotation, comments in the code. Interestingly, this seems unused. I guess in the case where dynamic fading is off, we would not have a darker static palette. Actually, yeah. And in the case where dynamic fading is on, we have a darker palette, but we don't actually need to put it inside this variable because we already have it on this, which is where it gets accessed from. Leave all of that as true, but I am going to run it again and make sure. I can't be too sure. All right, that is working. Let's just continue on with our double check here. Type annotation, comments inside a init, type annotation, no arguments, missing value is string, returns none. Expected type int got string. Your value should be an int, not a string. So I will say, I was talking about inconsistency in the API earlier, although I was talking about inconsistency in the same object on two different parts of the same object, which is not the same as what we have here. But it does strike me as odd that the flip digits value is int, but the flip clock's analogous thing to value, which is first pair, second pair, takes strings. Which I do kind of wish was consistent, but I do also think makes sense for the two different things, because the clock needs to be able to represent 07, which is a string. 07 is not a number. That number is known as 7. If we're not zero padding it, then it's not really a string. Or I should say, if we are zero padding it, then it is a string and not really a number, as far as Python types are concerned. So it does kind of make sense, but I do kind of wish they were consistent. So maybe this one could be string. I don't think the other one can be int, so I think the only way we could do it is potentially we could make this string instead of int, but int is helpful because it already filters out a lot of possible values for us that are invalid, like string A or the string hello or any string that doesn't contain an int, basically, or an int with 0 pads. I don't know, I think I'll keep it for now, but that is perhaps one bit of the API I would say I'm not altogether like perfectly happy with, but I also kind of agree with the choices I made, at least as of so far. It's none. New value is int, and it's none. Docstring with params, type annotations. Pair. This is string. It's an optional string because it could raise an exception, in which case I guess it returns none, probably. Or I don't know. Is it considered to return something if it raises an exception? I'm actually sure how that works, but if it raises an exception, then it doesn't return a string, so optional makes sense to me. It's essentially the deal here is if it's invalid, then it's going to raise the exception. If it's valid, then it's going to return the valid pair, potentially 0 padded if it needed to be. It's a bit odd here. I guess it's taking the number as a single index string, a single character string. So it would be taking the number 7 as a string and then 0 padding it to 07. Of course, you could pass in 07 and then it would know not to 0 pad it. So it's kind of just helping you in the event that your thing needs to be 0 padded but isn't already. Which is, I guess, kind of a nifty feature. Return string. New pair is a string, returns none. Second pair, string, new pair, string, returns none. It's everything in this one. Probably much closer to passing pre-commit at this point, although still probably not all the way there. I'm gonna just run it again because the first one would have ran black formatting. Reuse following make sprite flip animations. Okay, so we have lack of copyright header in this. Also have not documented or anything yet. This one should we still need to do. And now we'll put this in. Let's get one thing at a time. Let's make reuse happy first. Command line script to generate FlipClock sprite sheet app files. Reuse is happy now. Got some pylon lines, mostly just too long of lines. Ooh, that's going to be kind of annoying. I wish I could, like, Control-Alt-L. Fix that. Must be a place I can... Oh no, actually my Control-Alt-L is different than black. It's kind of a... Let's start fixing these, I guess. Oh, 8. Just put default value on the next line. So unfortunately, these start becoming wrong as I make changes, so now that I've edited 2, all of the rest of these numbers are wrong now, so we either keep track mentally of how many lines we've added, or we just keep running this over and over again. Although we also need to save, otherwise it's not going to actually run against the latest version. Too many instance attributes. So that we're probably not fixing. It has a lot of attributes because it has a lot of functionality. See a realistic way to reduce the number of attributes. Or the number of arguments, truth be told. I mean, I guess number of arguments, technically I could make an object that holds all of these and then pass it in as one object, like a FlipClock config object. Kind of a pattern that JavaScript uses a lot, but it's kind of against the spirit of what this thing is complaining about anyway, even if no longer against the letter of the law, so to speak. I never remember this. It's colon space disable equals. Too many locals also. Honestly, too many everything. Just has a fair amount of things. So it has a fair amount of functionality. It has kind of a lot of functionality, truthfully, a lot of complex functionality. If it could be a function, no self-use. How do we do that? Not pass self? Static? Static method? Is there with an anti-patterns? I don't know if this is the page I want to be like working from, right? We get to a function is common, touch the class at all. Manipulates the class attribute. This class method. Uses to get the class attributes. Static method more appropriate than class method to manipulate. Static method might make sense for us too, because this is like purely doesn't use anything else inside this class at all. This just takes a string, checks if it's valid, returns it back to you. If it is, does the zero padding if needed. This could just as easily be a function outside of this class altogether, and it would work just fine. I don't know. We need to change the way we call it. We change it to static like that. Yeah, so that one is the truth because one of the imports we only use for typing The other one we don't, so we want them to be separate for a reason. I think we cleared out FlipClock. Somehow I could get my linter that makes my yellow highlights and stuff be pylint and have the right configuration, but I should know how. Pretty much we're gonna have all the same 3 issues for this. Bit on this. It's just pylint wants us to make smaller, more concise objects, but I don't really know what we could put out of this. Like I said, we could pack stuff inside of subclasses, but at the end of the day, like, it's as complex as it is. It's not really going to get less complex by just packing stuff inside of other things, other objects. So this is, yeah, this is like this because if you don't enable dynamic fading, then you don't need the import. So that's intentional. Unused variable. This didn't work. It's instance rather than type. Is instance. Press Control S down there, which messes up the terminal. This one is intentionally unused. It's unused by the code. It's used to raise the exception to prevent the other one from being imported. Ironically enough, it is actually used. It's just not used by the code. And this one is just gonna happen right the same way as the other one. The bitmap is broken out because it's only used for typing, but these are actually used for things other than typing. Theoretically, that gets us through the library code. It's probably wrong import order in a bunch of these files. So I got a bunch of these over here. This is down to just the generator script, which already needs to be cleaned. I must have thought that I was going to use I, otherwise I wouldn't have used enumerate altogether, but It's like maybe we used I before. Or yeah, and here we're using I. Okay, I see. Actually fix this then so I don't. Closer. Using a string that doesn't have any interpolation. Should be passing through this. This certainly does not have doc strings or typing annotations yet. It does now pass pilot. Everything else inside pre-commit. That's good. Progress. Exchanged. Off change though. I'm surprised by that. Interesting. Let's see. I'm gonna probably run for too long, but let's see if we can't work through this a little bit here. Do entry found. Just have 2 left over. Error in code block directive. Maximum 1 argument allowed for supplied. Are we? It's wanting a new line between these, probably. It's seeing this and then 1, 2, 3, 4 for supplied, whereas it should be only seeing 1. Must be looking for new line. Explicit markup ends without a blank line. To do out, honestly. Expected it. Probably we're missing a new line. Maybe it would have been here. For simple example, should live in the examples folder. I'm going to make the version for the README like not quite minified, but knocking down the extent that we can and keep it still readable. This is supposed to be indented. Hey, built. Some stuff will be broken because it's not actually deployed. This might actually be wrong inside a cookie cutter. I think this should have had Adafruit in front of it. Should add the extra examples. Ooh. Oh, I think this is because my version of Python is too old for using typing extensions. That is a built-in library which needs to be inside of this. Basically has the same thing. You could probably just get a new Python, truthfully. 3.8.10, I think. Wouldn't have to go up too far to get a version with extensions. So there we go. Guy reference for the different pieces. We go to FlipDigit or FlipDigit. Hey, thanks for the follow, Pi Harbor, over on Twitch. Appreciate the follow, my friend. So we've got our FlipDigit class, which has got all of its arguments all typed here. And down here, values are in. May come back eventually and add some images to this, because it might be nice to have, like, I mean, potentially like an image of the animation sprite sheet inside of here, or inside of here, or inside of this one for the static sprite sheet. Or maybe we would just include those up here and not in the parameter. I don't know. There's a couple of different ways we could do it, but it might be nice to show those sprite sheets, you know, examples of how they're supposed to look, and possibly even an image showing how the whole thing looks on the display once you pull it all together. Possibly even a GIF, I guess. If it can support animated GIF, then we could even show the animation in it, which would be pretty cool. But I think that's about where I'm going to call it a night for tonight. I got both of these things typed up, annotated, docstringed. We got the docs building. We got Pylint, pre-commit, passing. I actually did all of the examples to go get those commented up, and also things like copyright and docstring, string at the top there. I did all that stuff earlier, a bit before I jumped on the stream, but I've done the rest of the stuff outside the examples on stream. Again, for folks that might be newer who are catching this time around, if you're interested in this particular project, there are a couple of VODs if you want to go back and watch them. I think they should still be on Twitch maybe, or if they've already fallen off or whatever. I think they expire after a couple of weeks on Twitch if they're not there anymore. All of my VODs are all up on YouTube. You can find them there, and they don't expire. So you can find the older videos where I was working on this project if you'd like to see the progress on it since the beginning. Kind of built this whole thing from the ground up, and I've done the majority of the work on stream. So if you're interested in this project or more generally CircuitPython widgets, that might be interesting to you. I will go ahead and commit, I guess, before I leave. Let's do that. I did start writing this, which all of this stuff is still true. Though, did I, yeah, changes. Well, my most recent changes were in the repo, right? They must have been, because I was clicking inside Pylint, making changes. I guess one thing we should do is, now that we made all those changes for Pylint, we should actually copy this, put it back on the device, and just make sure it actually still works, because either we broke something. Oh, good. Okay. Cool. I guess for funsies, I'll recopy the example, which this is the minutes, hours? No, just FlipClock simple test. Yeah. All right, so thank you everybody for watching. I hope everybody has a good night and a good week and all of that. I will catch you all next time. I think next time I'll be on stream for sure will be Friday night for the deep dive. It's actually fairly likely that that will be the next time. I probably won't be back before then. I've got courses, JavaScript courses that I'm teaching in the evenings on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then Wednesday. I don't typically stream a lot on Wednesdays because it's the evening that Show and Tell and Ask an Engineer are on the Adafruit channels over there. So yeah, realistically, probably Friday is probably the next time that I'm back for the deep dive stream at 4 p.m. Central, p.m. Pacific. It's the normal time slot for that over on the Adafruit channel. So I'll catch you then if you're interested. Again, I appreciate everybody watching. I hope everyone has a good night and all that stuff. I'll see you next time. Thanks.